Have you ever felt that inexplicable restlessness when someone close to you started acting differently? As if a part of them were already saying goodbye, even though the doctors hadn't found anything serious yet. There's an ancient wisdom that few know about regarding the signs that come before we leave this life. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, recorded some surprising patterns that appear weeks or even months before the physical end, signs that modern medicine is only now beginning to recognize. If this subject touches your heart, give a like now and hit the bell. This content can completely transform the way you support and be with a loved one in their final moments. There is a deafening silence in our society when it comes to death, a silence that stops us from seeing what's happening right in front of our eyes. Have you noticed how doctors, nurses, and even family members sometimes avoid mentioning certain signs? As if by not naming them, they could prevent the reality from showing itself. This resistance is deeply human. Nobody wants to be the messenger of that news. Nobody wants to admit that someone dear is starting their final journey. But what Edgar Cayce discovered, and what thousands in palliative care confirm today, is that this denial steals something precious from us, the chance to truly be present. Think about it for a moment. What if we recognize these signs not as a terrifying sentence, but as an invitation to the most authentic connection we could ever have with that person? How different would it be if, instead of turning your head, you could look directly at this sacred moment? The first signs are almost imperceptible. A subtle change in the gaze, a new relationship with time, random phrases that might sound crazy, but actually carry deep wisdom. A reordering of priorities that leaves those around puzzled. Your grandfather, who was always punctual, now forgets his appointments. Your mother, who was always worried about the future, now only talks about the past. These aren't symptoms to be medicated or fixed. They are the beginning of a metamorphosis, the start of a natural detachment from the material world, what Edgar Cayce described as the soul packing its belongings for the great journey. Recognizing these signs doesn't mean giving up on someone. On the contrary, it means honoring their process with full awareness. It means opening up space for truly meaningful conversations, for necessary reconciliations, for building a conscious legacy. Have you noticed how someone who always used to be the life of the party starts, very subtly, turning down invitations? How that person who loved crowds now prefers smaller, more intimate gatherings, or even just being alone? This isn't just a passing whim. It is one of the most striking signs that Edgar Cayce identified. This change in social behavior has been interpreted by conventional medicine simply as a symptom of depression or fatigue. But there is something much deeper going on. The vital energy, which used to be directed toward external achievements and social interactions, now starts to turn inward. It's as if the person is unconsciously saving their energy resources for the big transition that is coming. The soul begins to disconnect from earthly concerns, Cayce used to say. Not because of sadness or disinterest, but because it is beginning to feel the pull of another plane of existence. Watch closely. That family member who always loved parties now prefers to sit quietly, observing everyone with a distant smile. That friend who never missed a social event now declines invitations, choosing instead to spend time in contemplation or revisiting old memories. They aren't rejecting you, they're just shifting the focus of their energy. And here's a surprising revelation. This withdrawal isn't necessarily sad for the person experiencing it. Many report a deep sense of peace, as if they could finally let go of social expectations and just be. It's often the outside world that interprets this move as sadness or giving up. The kindest response we can offer is not to force the person back into old patterns. It's not about dragging someone to a party when their spirit is already preparing for another kind of celebration. It's about being present in the quiet. It's about creating spaces for comfortable silence. It's understanding that sometimes just holding a hand or simply being in the same room without words is the greatest gift. Nature teaches us this pattern. Trees, before shedding their leaves in the fall, pull back their sap. Butterflies, before emerging from their cocoon, become completely still. There is deep wisdom in that withdrawal that precedes great transformations. Do you have the time? Such a simple question can reveal profound changes in the perception of someone who is nearing the end of their journey on Earth. Edgar Cayce documented a fascinating phenomenon: the gradual detachment from the linear time as we know it. You may have noticed it without realizing its meaning. Your father, who was always methodical about his schedule, now mixes up breakfast with dinner. Your grandmother, who never forgot a birthday, now gets confused about the current year. It isn't just mental confusion, it's a fundamental change in the relationship with chronological time. Time, that human invention that divides our existence into seconds, minutes, and years, starts losing its rigidity. Memories no longer follow a logical order. A distant memory might seem like it happened yesterday, while recent events fade away. It's as if the mind is reorganizing a whole life, not in chronological order, but by emotional and spiritual significance. The soul doesn't know time the way we understand it, Cayce explained in his records. When we begin the transition, we gradually return to a perception of eternity, where past, present, and future exist all at once. This change can be disconcerting for us, who are still firmly anchored in our time-bound reality. We rush to correct, "No, Grandma, today isn't 1975. No, Dad, you already had breakfast 3 hours ago." But these constant corrections can cause unnecessary frustration. What if instead we entered this new realm of time with them? What if when your mother talks about an event from 50 years ago as if it happened yesterday, you simply ask, "How did that make you feel?" And if your grandfather wants to have dinner at 10 in the morning because, for him, it's already night, what's really lost in accompanying him? This flexibility in the perception of time also brings unexpected gifts. Many report that their loved ones in this phase share stories they had never told before. Crystal clear childhood memories resurface with surprising details. Connections between events that once seemed unrelated finally come together. It's as if, while preparing to leave, the soul takes one last look over its life, integrating all the pieces of the puzzle. For those who are there, this is a precious opportunity. These stories are the true legacy, far more valuable than any legal document. They are pieces of family history that could be lost forever if not listened to with full attention, and ideally recorded in some way. There is a reason why so many spiritual traditions compare death to a deep sleep. The connection between these states is much closer than we imagine, and it is in sleep that some of the most revealing signs begin to appear. Have you noticed how someone nearing the end of their life sometimes alternates between periods of extreme drowsiness and bouts of persistent insomnia? This isn't just a physical symptom to be medicated. It's a spiritual preparation that Edgar Cayce described in impressive detail. During sleep, the soul begins to transition between planes of existence, he explained. It's a gradual training for the Great Passage, where the spirit learns to detach from the body without the trauma of sudden separation. Notice the extremes that often appear. On one hand, that person who always had a light sleep now might sleep for 16 or 18 hours a day, almost in a coma-like state. On the other hand, there might be a peculiar insomnia, where the person stays awake for entire nights in a calm state of alertness, as if waiting for something important. Even more fascinating are the changes in dreams and experiences during these sleep periods. When your loved one wakes up and talks about conversations they had with deceased family members, about places they visited, or angelic figures they met, our immediate tendency is to chalk it up to medication or mental confusion. But what if something deeper is happening? Numerous near-death studies show consistent patterns in these accounts, regardless of culture, religion, or age. Cayce documented how the veil between dimensions gradually becomes thinner, allowing the person to perceive realities beyond the physical while still partly anchored to the body. A 92-year-old woman, weeks before her departure, began chatting animatedly with her husband, who had been dead for 30 years. The doctors called it hallucination, but she described details of conversations and interactions with surprising consistency. "He's waiting for me," she said with a serene smile. "He's showing me the way." How do you support someone during these changes in sleep? First, drop the need to fix or bring them back to reality. When your dad wakes up telling you about your grandma's visit, instead of saying, "It was just a dream," try asking, "How was that encounter? What did she say? Physically, create an environment that honors these new patterns. A quiet room where you can control natural light. Soft music that has special meaning. Scents that bring comfort. The body may be preparing for the final rest, but these moments of deep sleep and vivid dreams can be experiences of profound healing and spiritual preparation. Have you ever noticed the transformation in how someone relates to their own body as they approach the final journey? It's one of the most visible changes and, paradoxically, one of the most misunderstood. The gradual decline in interest in food and drink, which so often alarms us, carries a deep spiritual meaning that Edgar Cayce illuminated in his studies. The body knows when it's reaching the end of its cycle, Cayce explained. A reduced appetite isn't just a physical symptom, but a natural process of detaching from the most basic material needs. This transformation usually follows a revealing pattern. First, the person loses interest in meats and heavy foods. Then they start preferring soups, purees, and liquid foods. Eventually, only small sips of water or tiny pieces of ice bring comfort. The body, with its innate wisdom, is gradually cutting back on its material needs. Our instinctive reaction is distress. Mom, you need to eat. Grandpa, at least have some juice. We insist with full trays, nutritional supplements, elaborate strategies, all driven by love and fear. We feel that if the person doesn't eat, we are failing as caregivers, that we are somehow letting death come faster. But here is a liberating truth. This natural reduction in appetite doesn't cause suffering for the one experiencing it. On the contrary, forcing food when the body has already started this detachment can cause significant physical discomfort. The digestive system, which is also gradually shutting down, no longer processes nutrients the way it once did. I remember Maria, an 86-year-old lady, who said with surprising serenity to her desperate daughter trying to make her eat, "Honey, I'm not hungry because I'm not building anything in this body anymore. I'm just wrapping up my stay here." So how do we offer nutritional care at this time? By replacing quantity with quality and meaning. That spoonful of your favorite ice cream can bring far more comfort and joy than a full meal. That little sip of wine that the person always loved can carry more emotional nourishment than any supplement. More importantly, separate the act of feeding from the act of loving. You don't love someone any less if you respect their natural detachment from the physical body. In fact, there is a deeper love in accepting this process and focusing on comfort rather than fighting nature with exhausting insistence for both of you. The body, which was a faithful vehicle throughout a lifetime, now clearly signals that it's ready to be left behind. This isn't a message of defeat, but of transformation. The butterfly no longer needs the energy that sustained the caterpillar. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible change that occurs in the eyes of someone who starts to glimpse the other side. Have you noticed? It's as if their gaze, once focused on the things of this world, now sees beyond, alternating between a crystal-clear focus on what really matters and a contemplative distance from everyday concerns. Edgar Cayce documented this transformation of the eyes as one of the deepest signs of the transition process. The eyes are truly the windows to the soul, he used to say. When the soul begins to prepare for its journey, the gaze changes, sometimes intensely focusing on the beloved face in front of them, and sometimes contemplating something invisible to everyone else. This change in the eyes is accompanied by a transformation in how one speaks. Following a fascinating pattern, speech becomes slower, more deliberate. Words are chosen with a surprising economy. Trivial matters disappear completely from the conversations. It's as if every word now has to carry real meaning to be worth the effort of saying it. Why waste words on the superficial when time becomes precious? Cayce explained. This economy of words isn't a deprivation, it's a distillation of what really matters. Even more revealing is the content of these rare communications. Notice how a consistent pattern appears of revisiting the past, especially childhood and youth. Memories from 60 or 70 years ago resurface with surprising clarity. The smell of the bread your grandma used to bake, the texture of the dress from a first communion, the feeling of fresh water from a childhood stream. This isn't just random nostalgia. It's what palliative care specialists call a life review, a natural and necessary process of integrating experiences of giving meaning to the entire journey. It's as if the soul, before departing, needs to revisit the important chapters, tie up loose ends, and understand the meaning of it all. Then, in the middle of these distant memories, there often emerge surprising declarations of distilled wisdom. Like the 94-year-old gentleman who, after hours of recalling his childhood in the countryside, looked deeply into his granddaughter's eyes and said, "The only thing that matters in life is how much love you were able to give and receive. Everything else is just decoration." How do you accompany someone in this phase? First, acknowledge the therapeutic and spiritual value of these reminiscences. When your dad starts telling the same fishing story from 1952 for the third time in a week, don't interrupt with an impatient, "You've already told that story." Ask for more details. Help him elaborate on the narrative. This isn't just a repeated story. It's part of the process of integrating a lifetime. Second, become an active listener for these memories. Record them, if possible. Ask questions that deepen the experience. How did you feel at that moment? What did that mean to you? These stories are the true treasure being passed down, more valuable than any material inheritance. Finally, be aware of the pearls of wisdom that often come out during these moments. Often, amid seemingly mundane memories, deep insights about the meaning of life, declarations of faith, or advice distilled from a lifetime appear. These might be the last and most important lessons your loved one has to share. There is a deep emotional transformation that happens when we get close to the end of our journey on Earth. A transformation that might be the most beautiful and meaningful of all. Edgar Cayce described it as the soul tuning into higher vibrations, but you will probably recognize it as an expanded sensitivity, a new vulnerability, an emotional openness that can be surprising. That dad, who was always reserved and never said "I love you," suddenly has tears in his eyes while holding your hand. That mother, always strong and composed, now gets moved by the visit of a bird at the window. That stern grandfather, who never showed affection, now wants to hug everyone who enters the room. This isn't a fragility to be medicated or controlled. It's an expansion of the capacity to feel, to connect, and to express what may have been held back for decades. Emotional barriers built up over an entire lifetime begin to dissolve naturally. As we approach the transition, the soul starts to vibrate at frequencies closer to its natural state of universal love and compassion. What we call defenses, the pride, the rigidity, the indifference, are layers that begin to fade away, Cayce used to explain. This emotional openness comes with something even more transformative, a deep need for forgiveness and reconciliation. It's as if, as the soul nears the final balance of existence, it understands clearly the weight of unresolved resentments, of unspoken words, of broken relationships. You might notice this in seemingly casual questions. Do you have any news from your brother? Does anyone know where that old friend of mine is? Do you think your cousin will come to see me? Behind these simple questions often lies a deep desire for repair, for healing old wounds, for closing unfinished chapters. This is perhaps the most sacred moment for those who are with our loved ones, the opportunity to help facilitate reconciliations that might never have happened. When your grandmother asks about the cousin she hasn't spoken to in 30 years, it's not the time to bring up old grudges, but to ask, "Would you like to talk to her? Should I try to get in touch?" Many studies show that the burden of unresolved resentments can make the transition harder, while forgiveness, both given and received, brings a deep peace that eases the passage. As one 88-year-old lady beautifully expressed, "I realized I don't want to carry any weight to the other side. I want to leave as light as a feather." And what if direct reconciliation isn't possible? What if the person your loved one wishes to make peace with has already passed or is out of reach? A symbolic reconciliation is still powerfully effective. A written letter, even if never sent, an imagined conversation, a forgiveness ritual conducted with sincere intention, all of these can provide the emotional closure that is needed. Even more fascinating is what happens when these reconciliations occur. Many caregivers report a visible transformation, as if a physical weight were lifted, as if an inner light shone brighter. It's what the old-timers used to call putting the house in order before the great journey. This emotional opening offers us a precious gift, the chance to express love and gratitude so deeply that maybe we've never experienced it before. To say everything that needs to be said, to share the impact this person has had in our life, to create final memories of authentic connection that will sustain those who remain for many years after the departure. There is a phenomenon so extraordinary that even modern medicine still struggles to explain it: terminal lucidity. Have you ever witnessed or heard of that almost miraculous moment when someone who had been confused, sedated, or semi-conscious for days or weeks suddenly awakens with crystal-clear clarity? As if a window briefly opened between worlds. Edgar Cayce documented this phenomenon decades before science acknowledged it, describing it as a final gift from the soul to its loved ones, a chance for a conscious farewell, a final transmission of love and wisdom. It's as if the soul, already partly freed from the limitations of the ailing body, manages to briefly gather enough energy for one last meaningful communication, he explained. These moments of lucidity can last for minutes or a few hours, and they often come 24 to 48 hours before the final transition. Maria, who has been an elderly caregiver for 30 years, shared an experience that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. Mrs. Cecilia had been in a semi-comatose state for almost a week. The doctors said she wasn't aware of her surroundings, but on Tuesday morning, she opened her eyes, looked at everyone in the room, and started talking with impressive clarity, remembering grandchildren's names, making specific recommendations, even telling a joke. Everyone was in shock. 6 hours later, she peacefully fell asleep and passed away during the night. Equally impressive is the intuition of farewell, the ability many develop to sense that the moment of departure is near, even without any medical diagnosis confirming it. That grandmother who insists on gathering all the grandchildren for one last lunch. The father who suddenly wants to organize his personal documents. The mother who starts handing out small keepsakes to specific people. This intuition often shows up in surprisingly direct statements. I won't be here at next Christmas. I need to say goodbye to the garden. I think I'm going to see your father soon. Our immediate reaction tends to be to deny it, to reassure. Don't say that. You'll get better. But Cayce's studies, now confirmed by research in palliative care, show that this sense of an approaching end is extraordinarily accurate. How do we respond to these precious moments of clarity and intuition? First, by recognizing their reality and importance. When your loved one suddenly becomes lucid after days of confusion, don't dismiss that moment as just a good day or a temporary improvement. Be fully present. Listen closely. Ask the important questions you might have otherwise avoided. Second, honor the intuition expressed about the nearing end, even if it contradicts medical prognoses. When someone says, "I don't think I'll wake up tomorrow," instead of replying, "Don't talk nonsense," try asking, "Is there anything you'd like to tell me or something I can do for you right now?" Finally, be ready to help facilitate the goodbyes that often arise in these moments. If your dad, suddenly lucid, asks to see the sunset one last time, even if it's logistically complicated, do everything you can to make that happen. If your grandmother wants the whole family together, send those urgent messages. These aren't whims. They are deep needs of the soul preparing for its transition. There is a deep beauty in these brief moments of lucidity and in these hints of goodbye. They are like small windows between worlds, sacred opportunities for authentic connection and emotional closure. And when acknowledged and honored, they transform into precious memories that will sustain those who remain for many years. There is also a subtle but deeply significant transformation in the relationship with material objects and the physical environment when the soul begins its preparation to depart. Edgar Cayce noted a consistent pattern that transcends cultures and eras, a natural process of detaching from material things that often shows up weeks or months before the physical departure. You may have noticed this without understanding its deeper meaning. Your dad, who was always attached to his collections, begins giving them away to family members. Your grandmother, who never parted with certain pieces of jewelry, now insists that you take them home. Your uncle, usually secretive about his personal documents, suddenly wants to show where he keeps his will, insurance policies, and other important papers. This isn't just practical behavior from someone sensing the end, Cayce explained. It's a necessary spiritual process of letting go of the material anchors that keep the soul tied to this plane. It's as if the person intuitively knows they need to gradually release the ties that keep them attached to life. Even more fascinating is watching how this material detachment often follows a specific sequence. First, the objects with the least emotional value, financial possessions, property, items of material worth. Then, items with moderate emotional significance. And finally, those few objects loaded with deep personal meaning, the vow, wedding ring, a photo of a child, a mother's rosary, that often stay with the person until their final moments. João, 92 years old, surprised his family when, 3 weeks before his unexpected departure, he called each grandchild over and allowed them to choose a keepsake from his workshop, tools that throughout his life no one was ever allowed to touch. "It's time for them to continue working in someone else's hands," he said simply. His granddaughter later reflected, "It was as if he knew he was preparing for a journey where he wouldn't be able to take any baggage." Along with this detachment from objects comes an enhanced sensitivity to the physical environment, a need for peace, order, and meaning in the space around. The person who once could tolerate noise, agitation, and confusion now seeks tranquility. Bright lights become uncomfortable. Strong smells can cause distress. There is a natural search for an environment that eases a serene transition. How can we honor and facilitate this natural process? First, don't interpret the material detachment as pessimism or giving up. When your loved one starts giving away important possessions, don't stop them by saying, "You'll need that when you get better." Accept these gestures for what they really are, a necessary spiritual preparation, a closing ritual. Second, intentionally create an environment that supports this phase of transition. Palliative care studies show that certain environmental elements can ease a peaceful passage. Soft natural light, but not direct. Nature, sounds or meaningful music played quietly, a comfortable temperature, reduced electronic interference, and the presence of natural elements like plants, water, or crystals that have personal significance. Most importantly, honor the preferences expressed by the person, even when they seem irrational or inconvenient. If your grandfather, who always slept in the dark, now wants a small light on at night, respect that. If your mother, who always loved visits, now asks for moments of solitude, create that space. These aren't quirks, but authentic needs of the soul in transition. Finally, recognize the power of rituals in this moment of passage. All spiritual traditions have rituals to accompany the departure of the soul, not just out of tradition, but because they meet a deep need for both the one leaving and those who remain. A ritual doesn't need to be religious or elaborate to be meaningful. It can be as simple as reading a beloved text, sharing memories aloud, lighting a candle, or just sitting in a circle holding hands in silence. The physical environment we create around someone in their final moments isn't just a backdrop. It's a tangible expression of love, respect, and understanding of the sacred process that is taking place. It is, in many ways, the last gift we can offer to the ones we love. When we talk about the signs of the end of life, we tend to focus exclusively on the person who is leaving. But Edgar Cayce, in his deep wisdom, always emphasized that the transition is a dance between two worlds, and those who accompany that journey are also deeply transformed by the process. This transformation starts long before the final moment and continues long after. Being with someone at the threshold between worlds is one of the most sacred and transformative experiences we can have, Cayce used to say. No one witnesses this passage and remains the same. What happens to us when we become conscious witnesses to this process? First, we experience a profound change in our perception of time. Those who care for people at the end of life often report a different quality of temporal experience, a heightened sense of the present moment, where 5 minutes holding the hand of a loved one can contain more life than years of everyday interactions. Carolina, who cared for her mother during 3 months of palliative care, described, "Those 3 months were the longest and yet the shortest of my life. Each day seemed to contain a whole lifetime of emotions and connections. And yet, when I look back, it felt like it all passed in the blink of an eye." This change in the perception of time teaches us something that many spiritual traditions try to show us throughout life, that the present moment is all we really have, that the quality of being present matters more than its duration, that 5 minutes of authentic connection are worth more than hours of distracted presence. Second, we experience a profound redefinition of priorities. Anyone who has been with someone until the end knows that crystal clear clarity that emerges about what really matters in life. Suddenly, worries that once consumed our energy, the promotion at work, social status, material possessions, seem trivial compared to the essential experience of being there for a loved one in their final moments. An executive who took leave to care for his father shared, "I was obsessed with that board presentation. It felt like a matter of life or death. After 3 weeks by my father's side, I returned to work with a completely different perspective. I could clearly see what was urgent and what was truly important, and rarely were they the same thing." Third, we are faced with our own mortality in a way that no lecture, book, or movie could provoke. Being present for the farewell of someone removes, even temporarily, the veil of denial that normally shields us from the awareness of our own finitude. And although this can initially cause anxiety, it often becomes a powerful catalyst for living more authentically and with purpose. As the old saying goes, when you learn how to die, you learn how to live. Those who experience a conscious farewell often rediscover the value of living deliberately, of expressing love openly, of resolving conflicts quickly, because the experience clearly shows that our time on this plane is limited and precious. Finally, those who remain carry not only memories and longing, but also the responsibility of a legacy. And I don't just mean a material legacy, property, objects, financial inheritances, but an immaterial legacy that is infinitely more valuable. The values, the stories, the lessons, the distilled wisdom of a lifetime. Margareta, after caring for her 97-year-old grandmother, reflected, "I realize that I am now the keeper of her stories, of the recipes that were never written down, of the family traditions that no one else remembers, of the lessons she learned in nearly a century of life. And that isn't a burden, it's a treasure that I am responsible for keeping alive and passing on." There are many ways to honor this immaterial legacy. Some families create annual rituals to celebrate the memory of the departed. Others compile books of stories and photographs. Still others find ways to incorporate the values and teachings of the departed into projects that benefit the community. But perhaps the deepest way to honor the legacy of someone who has left is to allow the experience of accompanying them to transform us permanently, to make us more aware, more present, more loving. As one son expressed after his father's passing, the best way to honor his life is to live mine in a way that would make his eyes shine with pride. This video is coming to an end, but the reflection we started together continues. We talked about the signs Edgar Cayce documented with such precision, from changes in appetite and sleep to moments of terminal lucidity and intuitive goodbyes. But beyond the signs, I hope you noticed the invitation in this knowledge. The invitation to be present, truly present, when someone we love is completing their earthly journey. Because in the end, there is no perfect way to accompany someone to the threshold. There is no manual that can completely prepare us for this sacred moment. What exists is the possibility of authentic presence, of attentive listening, of love expressed without reserve. And perhaps that is the greatest gift we can offer and receive in these precious moments of transition. If this content touched your heart in any way, please leave a like and share it with someone who might benefit from these reflections. Also, leave your own experience in the comments. What did you learn from being with someone dear in their final moments? What signs did you notice that confirm what we talked about today? Your sharing might light the way for others who are living through this process right now. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time. We have many other videos on Edgar Cayce's teachings and on the spiritual journey we all share on this planet, regardless of our beliefs or traditions. Remember, death is not the opposite of life. It's part of life, just as birth is. And when we view this process with awareness and compassion, we discover that even in moments of farewell, there is a deep beauty, an invitation to authentic connection, and valuable lessons about what truly matters in our brief passage through this world. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. Thank you very much for your presence and attention. I'll see you in the next video with more reflections that nourish the soul and expand our consciousness. See you soon.